Hello and welcome back to Knit Until I Die. Um, it's been a long day. I had a doctor's appointment down in Denver, and this one was about 3 hours away from where we live in Wyoming. I really, really like the doctor that I saw today. Very down to earth. Let me know her thoughts on what's been going on. Yeah, and it was good. But I thought, I've been thinking about this, that I'd like to talk about how I got mini-me. So before I get into that, I'm just going to let you know, this is my heavily modified Louisiana sweater. I didn't really follow, like, hardly anything in the pattern. Like normal, I just kind of went off on my own. This is made out of Karen cotton cakes. While we talk, I'm still working on that Never sweater. I'm not quite to the point where I need to split for sleeves, but I should be there maybe tomorrow or the day after. Hopefully. So let me think. This yarn is Wicked Purple, and it's from Knit Style Yarns. She is on YouTube, and she does have her own store. And then the Never sweater is from Copy Callie. She has two YouTubes. The first one is Copy Callie, and the second one is More Copy Callie. And this is her first design that she published. Like I said, it's been a long day. So, before we get into mini-me, I'm going to give you some information that may be more than what you really wanted to know, but I think it's important. So when someone says that they have an ostomy, there's different types of ostomies. You can have a tracheostomy. You could have a colostomy, you could have a urostomy, or you could have an ileostomy. So a tracheostomy is basically an ostomy is basically a hole that performs some function. So like a tracheostomy, it allows you to breathe. A urostomy allows you to empty your bladder. How do I say this? Maybe something happened during like labor, or maybe the person is paralyzed somewhere along the spine, or there's other reasons too, that they need to be able to have their bladder express into an external bag rather than the normal way. And then a colostomy and an ileostomy are very similar. They're kind of like two sides of one coin. So colostomy means that the part of your colon is still there, and so your digestive stuff runs through the digestive system, your mouth, your throat, your esophagus, your stomach, to your small intestines, then into your large intestine. Colostomies, although not always, are typically more, they don't lose as much water, we'll put it that way. And it's literally an opening where they pull part of your intestines out that allows for a diversion of your bodily output. And it may be that you were injured, or you have a disease process going on, but for some reason they need to have to kind of divert your output. Typically, although not always, colostomies are on the left side of the body, and typically ileostomies are on the right. Okay, an ileostomy is where they pull part of the small intestine through the stomach wall, not stomach, the abdominal wall, and it empties into a bag. It is technically digestive output, but it's not, it's just liquidy, we'll put it that way. And you can lose a lot of essential things like salt and potassium and water, your hydration, through your ostomy. Okay, so back in 2016, I let me back up a little bit farther. Back in 2015, in the fall, I was hired by a company, and I was doing a lot of traveling for that company. And I'd had bleeding from the bottom off and on. But that September 2015 was when I started having blood in my stool every day. Talk to my doctor, oh, it's hemorrhoids. Look on Google, simplest answer is it's hemorrhoids. So I thought, well, I must have hemorrhoids. I continued this way, having bloody stools and very smelly bloody stools for almost a year. So late June 2016, I was struggling. I couldn't eat. I couldn't drink. I was tired all the time. I was nauseous all the time. And I was still having bloody stools. I went to urgent care a couple of times, but my issues were just not resolving. I should say my mother is a registered nurse and has been my entire life. She's a very kind, compassionate, loving person that didn't really see what was really going on. And once we found out what was going on, she was kicking herself. But there's so much stuff that I didn't tell her and didn't tell doctors because I didn't think it was a problem. So fast forward to late June of 2016. I've gone to the urgent care a couple of times. I'm close to passing out. I'm white every time I stand up. I am just extremely fatigued. I'm very short of breath. And so my mom was like, you've done urgent care a couple of times. We need to go to the hospital. I did not want to go to the hospital because I couldn't afford to go to the hospital as far as I was concerned. And I couldn't miss work. I finally had a job where I seemed to be excelling and I was happy. I enjoyed what I was doing. I was really fearful because we live in an at-will state, and so employers can get rid of you whenever they want, for whatever reason they want. So I really fought not to go to the hospital, but I didn't have much fight left in me. So Mom took me to the hospital. And they took some blood and, they were going to run some things. And then all of a sudden, it was like just pandemonium exploded in my room. And this is like maybe half an hour after they got me back into a room. And as soon as that happened, Mom knew. She knew I was really, really sick. Because they don't just bust out several providers and a bunch of nurses and techs in one room on one patient in a rural hospital for no doggone good reason, Well, my blood counts were extremely low and I needed transfusions. So I got a couple blood transfusions and I was on the hospital ward, but I just could not eat and drink. Nothing wanted to pass out of my stomach. So they eventually got me scheduled for a upper endoscopy and then also a colonoscopy where they go up through the bottom. And everything was clean except for one polyp. Now, I'm going to put the quotations in there because that's important later on. Well, I got out of the hospital around July 1st. They had me on medication. I thought I was doing okay. I landed back in the hospital towards the middle of, well, probably around the 20th of July. And I landed in the hospital because I had a blood clot in my leg, was still bleeding every time I used the bathroom. And I could not keep my blood counts up. So, got more blood transfusions. They told me what medicine they wanted me to take. I was taking the medicine. The GI doctors were like, you just have to take this medicine and you'll be fine. Just take the medicine. I was taking the medicine. I was not fine. Get discharged. 2 weeks later, back in the hospital. So now we're in August, and I am really not doing too hot. I get more blood transfusions, and this time not this time. I get discharged, and I'm kind of doing okay. I can drink some water. I'm just trying to hoof it and get back to work and do what I need to do. September rolls around, and by this time I'd been hospitaled another 2 times, or in the hospital another 2 times. September rolls around, and it's like around the 10th of September. I'm admitted all over again because I'm telling the doctors it feels like my stomach is in my lungs, and I can't breathe, and I am so damn nauseous. And of course my blood counts were down again, so we had to do more blood transfusions, and I couldn't drink. And while on the ward, one of the nurses, I don't think she meant me to hear it, but she told someone else that she thought I was a mental patient. I was so upset that I banned her from my care. I didn't want her in my hospital room. I didn't want her touching my meds. Nothing. And I don't normally react like that because growing up with a nurse for a mother and then also having several different occupations where I had to care for other people, I understand that they have an enormous responsibility. They have huge jobs. They rarely get to sit down and, they rarely get to use the restroom. They rarely get to sit down and drink, let alone eat. I understand the life of a nurse working in a hospital because I was exposed to that many, many times in my childhood. Not so much, not on the inpatient side, but on the outpatient side of meeting those nurses and going to brunch with those nurses, and hearing things from those nurses. So I have a great love and respect for nurses. So for me to ban a nurse from my room is like, I've only done it that one time. And I probably wouldn't do it again unless I felt like I really needed to protect myself. So anywho, I'm back in, and they can tell from the D-dimer that I have clots. Well, we already established I had a clot in my leg, a DVT. Well, because they were treating me the best way that the hospital knew how to treat me, I actually was, my blood clots were not actually being, my blood clot was not being treated correctly, and it sparked what they call a saddle PE, which means you have a blood clot on either side of the, where the branches break off, so you have 2 lungs. that is a very dangerous PE, because if they clot off completely, you're going to die because there's no oxygen that can be exchanged. Well, it sparked to my lungs, and I was in there, and I told the nurse that I thought I needed oxygen, and then by the time she got the oxygen into the bathroom to me, I had face planted. I was gone, completely out. And when I woke up, I kept telling the nurses that I couldn't breathe, that I didn't feel well, and I had, pardon language, but I'd had a bloody bowel movement all over myself, all over the entire bathroom, and it was just an awful experience. After that, I told my doctor at the local hospital that I felt like I needed to go to a higher level of care, or I was probably not going to be alive by Christmas. Unbeknownst to me, my mother had said the same thing to him. And thank God he listened to us. So he worked with a bunch of other doctors to get me shipped down to Denver to Anschutz, which is an amazing hospital. They give great care. They have amazing experts. It's all around a very good experience. It's always been a good experience. Every time I've been hospitalized or seen a provider down there, it's top level, top tier care. So I get down to Anschutz, and they tell me that they have to start repeating all the tests that Cheyenne had done. Let me tell you, I was not a happy camper at all. Why do they have, we already have done those tests. Like, why do we have to redo them? That doesn't make any sense to me because we've already done them, right? Well, I'm glad that they finally did get around to redoing them. But what had happened in the meantime, while I was waiting for the scopes to happen, I was in the hospital. The CNA was in there with Mom and I was too weak to walk to the bathroom, so I was on what they call a bedside commode. And then all of a sudden, I tried to tell them I thought I was going to pass out, and before I could get it completely out my mouth, I passed out. And Mom caught me so I didn't hit the floor, and we were right across from the nurse's station, and so they called a code and got me into ICU, and boy, did I need blood at that point, because I dropped more than 500 cc's at one time, and that's a lot of blood to lose at one time. So I'm in the ICU, and the GI wanted to do the scopes, but I needed to drink the stuff to clean things out, and I could not do it. I tried. They tried putting a tube down my nose to get down to my stomach, and it kept hitting the shelf in the back, and they could not get it past it. And I was just in tears because I knew I needed that. By that point, I knew I needed that scope for them to do anything with me, but I couldn't drink that stuff, and the tube would not go down, and I was so upset. Still in ICU. So they talked to the GI, and he's like, well, it's been a long time since you've had any food or water. Let me see what I can, I'll try and see what I can see. Turns out I didn't have one polyp. My entire colon was over full of polyps. And the GI doctor said that, the medicine that the Cheyenne doctors had been giving me, I actually had built up kind of immunity to that medicine. So it didn't matter how much of that I took, it was never going to work. So he gave me a choice. I could try another medicine, or I could have the surgery done where they remove your colon and they give you an ostomy. I'm not a normal patient. He didn't have to convince me to go for the surgery. I knew that's what I wanted. I had already done a lot of research on it. I had watched the actual surgery on YouTube, which is awesome. As far as I'm concerned, it's awesome that we can go and see things like that if we want to. If that skews you out, don't do it. But I enjoy watching that stuff and kind of learning about the different things, my different disease processes and different surgeries and, different things that I've had to deal with. In the meantime, the GI talked to the colorectal because I had already told them I wanted surgery. And they got me into a different room and out of ICU because I was more stable. But because I hadn't had anything really to eat or drink in months, I'd lost quite a bit of weight, which was a good thing. But the bad thing was that I was not going to heal well because of how sick I was. So they put me on TPN. And not long after I started the TPN and after I'd had the colonoscopy, which was really cool because I actually got to stay awake for it that time, and watch the video and see what they were seeing, which to me was awesome. If it skeeves you out, don't look. So anywho's, I had to wait quite a while, probably about 12 or 14 days to have my surgery. When the surgeon came in to, talk to me and explain things, I started explaining it to her because I had watched it on YouTube. And that kind of shocked and surprised her because she was not used to having a patient like me. Well, the day finally came where I got my surgery. And I told my colorectal that I wanted an end ileostomy instead of a loop ileostomy. An end ileostomy means that everything that you take in by mouth comes out at that one location and it doesn't overflow into another one. A loop ileostomy would mean that most of it would end up in my bag, but there would be some that could bypass, and that would be connected to your rectum, because they don't take the rectum at the same time unless you have colorectal cancer. Then that's an entirely different situation. But because I had ulcerative colitis, and I had what they called refractory ulcerative colitis, meaning it was not responding to the typical meds that it should have. And my colon was massive when they took it out. Just absolutely massive. And it was completely full of polyps, but you could also see where stuff had broken and bled, and it was bad. After getting my ostomy, I decided to name him Mini-Me, and he is definitely a male. If you've ever taken care of a baby boy, go to change their diaper and you get that's what he used to do when I was trying to change him in the very beginning, was I'd get the bag off and I'd get everything clean, and then he would just decide to spew upwards. And he would talk. He'd be quiet when I was out and about doing stuff, but then when I was at home, oh, he was so darn noisy. Well, that's why I decided to call him Mini-Me. And I had Mini-Me about 5 months when we decided to take the rectum out because it was not doing well at all. So that was my second kind of like colorectal surgery not kind of, it was my second colorectal surgery. So my back door is completely permanently closed, and my front door, which is mini me, is permanent, and he's, knock on wood, he's not going anywhere. Like anybody that is that has an ostomy, specifically if it has to do, urostomy, colostomy, ileostomy, there's a lot of stigma coming around with that. And it doesn't bother me. I'm pretty open. I don't mind showing people my ostomy or talking about my ostomy. But there are a lot of people that feel like their body is forever changed and they'll never be like normal again, or they're ashamed of having an ostomy, or so many different feelings. And their feelings are very valid. And I wish I could just give them all a hug and tell them it will be okay. Having an ostomy is a pretty big learning curve, because you have to figure out what's going to work for you on keeping your appliance on. And what works for me is not necessarily going to work for the next person. And it's a big trial and error, over and over again, trial and error, until you kind of figure out what works. And then typically you get kind of used to what gets you the longest wear. And that's always our goal, is to have an appliance stay attached, 3 to 5, at least for ileostomates, 3 to 5 days. Other people, sometimes it's less. Other people, it's more. But specifically for people with ileostomies like mine, you really want to try and get 3 to 5 days of wear out of your appliance. Part of that is because you want your skin to be nice and healthy underneath your wafer. You don't want any sores. You don't want any pressure points. You have to be very careful of that skin, which becomes delicate because it's not being exposed to the air. It's typically covered like almost 24/7, 365. But the other side of the coin is ostomy supplies are not cheap. They're very, very expensive. I have decent insurance because my mother purchased it for me and pays for it. If I had to buy it on my own, I couldn't afford it. Even with the voucher system and all the other stuff they got, I would not be able to afford it, because the plans that I could afford would not allow me to see my doctors that I need to see, would not allow me to be on the medicines that I need to be on. So thankfully I have my insurance. And with my insurance, it costs me approximately $200 a month for my supplies. Without my insurance, it's over $1,000 a month. I don't know about you, but I can't afford to pay for that. I have a medicine that I pay $5 a month for, $5 for a 2-month supply. But if I had to pay for it out of pocket, it's over $13,000 for a 2-month supply. And it's hard because I recognize that people do hard work and they need to get paid. I'm not saying that they don't. But it's rough when you can't hold down a full-time job anymore because of all of I can't, because of all my health issues that are going on and all the doctors I need to see, because most of my doctors are down in Colorado. I only have 2 in Wyoming right now, and the rest are all down in Colorado. If it weren't for Mom, I wouldn't be here. many, many, many times over. So I'm going to circle back a little bit. Something that I did not realize that I needed to tell the doctors, because I had had this routine, bodily routine, since I was a very young child. And mom was working a bunch of, night shifts, swing shifts. And so she wasn't at home a lot when I was. My grandfather and my grandmother were. And so mom had no idea that even starting as young as a little kid, I used the restroom 8 to 10 times a day, every day. I didn't realize that that was a problem. I was very, very regular on my 8 to 10 times a day schedule, all the way up until I got an ileostomy. Now that I have my ileostomy, I have a high output ileostomy. And that means that I still use the restroom like 10 times a day just to empty my bag. But I don't have blood bleeding now. And to some extent, I am healthier than I was before I got my ileostomy. Mom really was kicking herself that she didn't know that I used the restroom as much as I did. And she didn't realize that some of the other stuff that was going on that were kind of sort of warning signs, but we didn't recognize that. My doctors didn't recognize that. So the moral of the story, as far as I'm concerned, is if you can, try and give all the information that you can to your provider so they have a complete picture of what's going on. Try and be consistent and go to your doctor's appointments. And if you are diagnosed with something something like that, like an inflammatory type of arthritis, psoriasis, UC or Crohn's, diabetes. I actually have all of those. And all of those play a part in, especially with the UC and the diabetes, with what's going on in my liver, and with me being basically terminal with my liver. But I will say that Mini-Me has saved my life several times over. And even though Mini-Me is just part of my small intestine, pulled out through my abdominal wall, and I put a wafer in a bag on it, I still talk to him, and interact like he's a real thing, like he could talk back to me, which for me helped me accept the changes in my body. I was never skinny to begin with. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But the doctors, when I was young, how they understood what was going on was one way to look at the situation, but it was not looking at the whole situation. I had inflammatory arthritis and UC as a child. I can remember before even going to kindergarten, having pain in some of my joints over and over again. And Grandma would just tell me that I was overreacting and, just wait until you're old. So I stopped complaining about that stuff real fast, even though I had it. And it wasn't until I was so bad that I couldn't hardly walk that finally a doctor looked at me and said, "You have tortuous feet and ankles," because I have bone spurs and bones out of place and tons of arthritis, inflammatory arthritis, because I have psoriatic arthritis. And that was like the first step, because that was long before I got diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis or my ileostomy, getting my ileostomy. But that was the first time that a doctor looked at me and didn't just see my weight, saw that there was actually something physically wrong. And I am so grateful for that gentleman, because he helped me get things that I needed to try and kind of help control some of that pain and walk better and do different things. And now I have a whole slew of doctors for all these different things, that systems inside my body that are going wrong. And they're going wonky and they're going wrong because of the inflammatory processes that went uncontrolled for decades inside my body, because they were not recognized for what they were or what they are. And I don't blame, per se, the doctors. It's just that they didn't have the information, that the cutting edge information that the doctors down in Colorado have. And, sorry, Watson's talking to me. Being able to get that higher level of care, the more precise expertise, has helped me and has lengthened my life. Because if I didn't have a lot of the stuff that I have now in place, that's been in place for a while, I wouldn't be here. I've had too many close calls with bleeding and all kinds of other stuff. And we're finally in a place where my body is pretty much as good as it's going to get for right now. I'm not on the uphill climb, I'm on the downhill slide. But what worries me isn't being dead, and really isn't the dying process. Now what worries me are the people that I'm going to leave behind, because I don't want them to hurt in the way that I have experienced the pain of a loved one passing. I don't want them to have that. I want them to have joy that we spent time together and we got to do things together, and that we got to, that I want them to be happy that I'm happy. That just spending time with each other and just going places with each other and just talking to each other. That's the kind of memories that I want to build. And then when I'm gone, they should go have a party. Go, do whatever they want to do, but have a party and know that I'm okay and that they'll be okay too. I don't want to leave them behind with so much pain and agony of why did this have to happen or any of that, because realistically, I don't have kids. I'm not in a relationship. I got my dogs. I got my mom. But realistically, I've led a good life. I'm in my 40s now. I really enjoy certain things. Like I love to knit and crochet. Love spending time with my old man Watson and my baby Humphreys. Like spending time with my mom. I am going to attempt to do things with my mom after I get on palliative care next month. There's things that I want to do with mom because I think that we would both enjoy it, but I know that she wants to do it. And I want to be able to make those memories with her, and with my aunt, and with a couple other people. So they understand that when I go, I'll be waiting on the Rainbow Bridge with all the dogs, waiting on them, waiting for them to come. But yeah, and I know that it's a hard subject to think about your own mortality or someone else's mortality, and it's harder for me to think about somebody else's mortality, but it doesn't bother me to talk about my mortality. I guess I know I've made peace with it, and I know that my ride to the Rainbow Bridge is coming sooner than probably a lot of other people's, and that's okay. Because I will be on that Rainbow Bridge, and I'm hoping that when I get there, that Gail is standing there so I can give her a big old hug and just see her smile. Gail is an aunt by marriage, who just recently passed, and she always had this infectious smile and these beautiful eyes. And oh, she teased and laughed, and she just was so just jovial and good-hearted, and tried to make the situations lighter. And I'm glad I got to see her before she passed, but I'm really hoping that when I get to the Rainbow Bridge, she'll be there, so I can give her a big old hug and get to see her smile. And, you know, I know there'll be other people there that I want to see, like my papa and my Uncle Dick. And even my grandpa's cousin, and there's a couple other people that have passed that I specifically know that I want to go and give them big hugs. And, of course, all the animals that I've loved that have left us, they'll be there. And I will just be in hog heaven. Absolutely in hog heaven. And maybe they'll have a Dr. Pepper machine. That would be fun. Dr. Pepper. Dogs, family. Maybe everybody up there can eat like cake and cheesecake and not gain any weight. And maybe they'll have your favorite whatever food or whatever to help you transition. And if you haven't met him, this is my whiny and Velcro dog. His name is Watson. He's 15 years old, and he's definitely my child. Mom's okay. He likes mom, but the preference is definitely for me. Now, Humphrey's on the other side. My baby, he likes spending time with my mom during the daytime because mom's out doing stuff and gardening and, you know. But then at nighttime, he knows he comes in with me to go night-nights, and he loves sitting on our couch, and he's a real cuddle bug at nighttime. And that's usually when Watson is conked out. But yeah. Both boys go to work with me at times. Most of the time, Watson's the one that goes with me, but both of them go to work with me. But yeah, that's the story of how I got Mini-Me. And if you think that, you know, the medical care that you're getting, that people are trying, but it's just not hitting the mark, you can always get a second opinion. You can always go to a higher level of care. Doesn't mean putting more effort into it and sometimes putting more money into it, yes. But there are many times where it is very much worth it. So I hope that this wasn't too much of a Debbie Downer episode. And I'd like you to remember that you are wanted, you are needed, and you matter. Please be kind to everyone, including yourself. Have a great day.